.NET Core and all those goodies today. Oh, there's the mic, even better. Just real quick, this is a useless slide, I'm sure, but I'm the Chief Architect of DevOps and Modern Software at Insight. I am a Microsoft Regional Director and MVP. It means I do not work for Microsoft, but I do know a lot of them real well. So if you have questions or feedback around some of the things they're doing here, I can certainly try to help or get it to the right folks. And I know that they really want to hear what everyone is planning on doing and what their thoughts are on this topic in particular. The best way to reach me is on Twitter. I'm very responsive there. So please follow me. If you have questions after this, I'm always happy to help. And that's really the best way to get a hold of me. Just a quick survey here. How many folks here are doing WPF or Windows Forms work for the day-to-day jobs? Everyone. OK, good. Anyone here not doing Windows Forms? Anyone's not know what it is? OK, yeah, put your hand down. OK, well, so you're in good company here. Just maybe one step further. Are these new applications? Anyone building a new application? They just started within the last, say, 2 years. Good. See, active development. And how many folks are doing, is it just like maintenance, bug fixes, keep the lights on, but we're not really doing anything? OK, a few of those. And that's really what we expect. And if you've been coming to these conferences for a while, have you felt a bit left out? Say, all this web content, Blazor's super cool, but I'm working on the desktop. What's for me? Maybe a little bit. You're not alone. So just one quick number here coming from Ignite this past year. There's over 2.4 million developers every month using Visual Studio to build desktop applications. It may not have been the thing that Microsoft and others have been talking about over the past few years, but there's absolutely no shortage of people who are, like you, are doing this on a day-to-day basis. So it's a very large quantity of people here. And this isn't really a Windows 10 talk, but the Windows 10 migration is coming along. Windows 7 is end of life in less than a year now. Thank you. So hopefully most of your organizations are well on their way towards moving to Windows 10, and if they haven't yet, have at least concrete plans at this point to do so. How many folks here have heard of .NET Core? Everyone. Very good. It's a better number than if I asked this question last year. So you know then that .NET Core is Microsoft's open source cross-platform framework, which up until now hasn't had much of a story for the desktop. What's coming now, though, is part of .NET Core 3, our support for new platforms. And it really is about moving the platform forward. And that's to add support for things like AI and IoT. But most exciting for me is the desktop, because I am a desktop developer at heart. That's where I started my career at some of the financial institutions, writing trading systems. And the stuff that the web guys are just dealing with now, we were dealing with 15 years ago. Come on, high performance, concurrency, multi-threaded trading grids. Yeah, come back to me when it gets hard. So this is a space that has been really neglected up until now. And I'm really thrilled to see this get some attention on .NET Core 3. So .NET Core 3 is bringing support for Windows Forms high DPI. That is one where, how many folks, show of hands, WinForms exclusively? Yeah, good. Windows Forms is still to this day the easiest way, in my opinion, to write an app. I mean, I love WPF, but you're not going to beat the Windows Forms designer. It's just drag those text boxes out there, you double click, and you have an app, and you can go about your day. Well, if you've tried to run this on a high DPI screen so far, you've probably noticed it doesn't work very well. And it's because the fixes that are required for high DPI would break the .NET framework, would break compatibility with somebody. Someone somewhere would complain, and Microsoft wouldn't hear the end of it, and therefore they just can't do it. So one of the key benefits of .NET Core 3 is that it can be installed side by side. And I will say this again and again, because it is, in my opinion, the reason everyone here should care about it. How many folks here are running on .NET 4.7.2 in their companies? Few. Okay. 4.7? 4.6? Okay. Anyone still on 4.5? Please tell me it's at least 4.5.2. Because 4.5 hasn't been in support for quite a while.
I think there are some in production that are still 4.5.
Oh, I'm so sorry. They have, there's probably exploits in the wild, sorry, there. So I would suggest that they at least look into the 4.5.2 update to get those fixes. But that illustrates the key point here. There are reasons why organizations have not updated .NET Framework. And that's because it's a global machine-wide installation. So with .NET Core being able to be side-by-side, applications can opt into it explicitly, and it gives you as a developer the flexibility that you didn't really have with the .NET Framework. So with that, you can do things like host UWP controls in WinForms or WPF. How many folks remember or are actively using the element host controls in WinForms to host WPF? A few. How about the other way, using from WPF hosting Windows Forms? Yeah. This isn't really a surprise here, because you're not going to sit there and say, I have this Windows Forms app or this Windows Forms control or WPF control. I'm not going to rewrite it. That's silly. But I do want to use it. Similar story here with UWP, and that's saying, look, no one is really going to write or rewrite their app in UWP. That was Microsoft's, they tried that, and everyone kind of laughed in their face, because why would you throw out your perfectly good code and rewrite it in this other language or other set of screens? There's no business value there. But you might want to use their text box with inking support, or maybe you want to use the Edge web view, because it's current instead of the ancient IE11 that's in the web browser control. Or perhaps you want to use the modern maps control that's more efficient and faster. There's a lot of scenarios where the UWP controls have things in there that you want to use. But you're not going to rewrite your app, so you need a way of using them in your existing app. And that's what the XAML Island technology allows you to do. So that is supported in .NET Core 3. The other fun one is that you can actually deploy this as a self-contained executable. That's just a single file, some exe, just put it on a thumb drive or network share and run it. And we'll be looking at some of that in greater depth in a few minutes. Talked a little bit about this, but side-by-side is certainly the big one. But you have performance improvements as well. So the .NET Framework is on a lot of machines. I don't know exact numbers. If it's in the billion at this point, it's possible. But any change there is going to undergo heavy regression testing, strict scrutiny, blah, blah, blah. You can't change things without risking breaking code. Now, if you've been following any of the .NET Core 2 development cycle, especially 2.1, there's been a huge push on optimization, reducing allocations, making it so that you can write allocation-free code wherever possible through APIs with span of T, reference structs, and all sorts of making unsafe code safe again through static allocation techniques. Well, all of those are based on .NET Core 2.1 types and are likely never really going to make it into the .NET Framework. For example, string. No one really, really wants to touch string in the .NET Framework. If you messed something up in there, that would be bad. But there's a bit more flexibility to experiment and move forward. I keep hitting the clicker. On the .NET Framework, or sorry, .NET Core, because of the side-by-side capability. If there's some new behavior, some new overload resolution, some new type that gets added, you had to opt into that to get it. Someone updating your version of the .NET Framework on your box isn't going to just make your app stop working, which is exactly what happened in some unfortunate cases with the .NET Framework. So, I mean, 100% compatibility is extremely difficult. Even behavioral changes, you might be relying on an API to throw. Meanwhile, it gets fixed, and now it doesn't throw. The API didn't change, but the behavior did. Is that a bug? Is that the framework? Like, one person's bug is another person's feature that they were counting on, and you just broke them. Another huge one here is the fact that it's open source. And I don't think that it's easy to overstate that, because if there's a bug or some issue you run into that's affecting your particular scenario, it's possible to go into the underlying framework, work with the .NET team, work with the community, and fix it. Or if there's a new API that you're saying, look, we really are trying to do this thing, it would be really convenient if, I don't know, the XAML window class exposed a, I don't know, an hwind handle for some reason. I'm making stuff up. But if there's something that's in there, those are the kinds of discussions you can have in there and get that code contributed into the main framework, where it will just ship for everybody. Heck, if you really want to build and maintain your private fork of this stuff, you can do that too. I don't recommend that, but you have the flexibility with any open source project to do that. So that's a significant benefit. So that's to say, with the .NET framework, it's going to slow down. It's really going to have critical bug fixes and mandatory feature updates like I imagine TLS 1.3. When the new version of TLS comes out, it's probably going to be there. It's not going to get huge amounts of new features. It's also not going away anytime soon. .NET Framework is a Windows component. It's tied to the full lifetime of Windows, which is, I don't know, at least 10 years from the current release. It's 2019, so let's say at least 2029. And then the next version of Windows will keep pushing it up because it's still a Windows component. Also, many of Microsoft's major lines of business and things like Exchange or other massive products are built on the .NET framework. It doesn't make business sense for them to rewrite it in their scenario. The .NET framework's not going anywhere. So just something to be clear, just because .NET Core is the shiny new thing, that's not to say that you should you have to rewrite everything or risk the .NET framework going away or losing support of any kind. Not at all. What I would say is that if you're looking to take advantage of new platform features and you want the platform that's evolving and moving faster, then .NET Core 3 is something to start looking at, especially since now it'll cover the desktop scenarios that it didn't support in the past. Another way of thinking about it, if you're maintaining an app, not really adding any new features, just saying, look, a bug fix here and there, patch it, keep the lights on, leave it alone. It's not worth anyone's time or effort to update and port that. If you're actively building new features onto it and saying, look, this is under active development, we need to move it forward, and it's in a critical app for us, it's a good time to start looking at moving that over to .NET Core 3, and we'll explore how to do that here. So the current status of .NET Core 3 is that they just released Preview 2 a few days ago. It was announced, the first release was in Connect back in December. You do need Visual Studio 2019 Preview to play with .NET Core 3. I will add that Visual Studio 2019 and the previews install completely side by side with 2017. So you don't have to worry about messing up your 2017 instance. Use 2017. That's where you're getting your day-to-day work done. You can also install 2019, without fear of mixing stuff. So I want to make that clear. The designers are not yet here. It's just, and we'll show you some workarounds of how to use the designer a different way. But it will come at some point. I imagine before it ships. Just so that's just the current state of where we are today. The other one is that WPF, Windows Forms, and the Windows UI library have been made open source. That was a big announcement at Connect as well. So all of the XAML technologies are there. They're getting more open source over time. As last I checked, the WPF stuff had some bits in there, and again, as the team is figuring out how to get stuff there, you'll see more. Right? That's a pretty big change for the Windows team to move stuff into the public. So that's really awesome. If you're looking to migrate a .NET Framework app, there's a few steps I would suggest. The first thing is to look at the .NET Portability Analyzer. It's going to give you a roadmap of what does it expect will just work. It'll help flag any APIs you might be using that might be different, or in some cases that are not supported. Almost everything is supported on .NET Core 3. However, things like app domains and remoting are absolutely not supported. They're by design not going to be moved forward. If you are using things like remoting, a recommendation would be to look at another messaging protocol like gRPC or other similar RabbitMQ. Use something else. Remoting's not coming. The other one is app domains, where there's another solution for loading assemblies side by side. It's beyond the scope of this talk, but there's information online on how to do that. But just know that there would be a change for that scenario. The other one, how many folks are using or still on packages.config? If you go to your project file, is there a file called packages.config hiding in there? A few? OK. So in the latest versions of Visual Studio, and this is kind of they shipped it and then kind of forgot to tell anyone it was there. You can right-click that packages.config file and say migrate to package reference. And it will look at your dependencies, tree shake to get rid of all the transitive ones, and keep only the ones you really need to have directly referenced in there and convert that for you. I would go bottom up, start with your libraries, and then go library by library and just migrate them and verify that it still works. But it's definitely something I would do tomorrow or on Monday when you're back at the office after this conference. You can do this even without moving to .NET Core 3. Package reference has a newer mechanism for using NuGet and has a huge number of benefits for that, including transitive dependencies and getting rid of all that mess in your packages.config file. So something you can do as soon as possible, but it's absolutely required if you're going to move over to .NET Core 3. At that point, I would move over to your libraries. And if you're targeting .NET Framework, I would look at moving it to either .NET Standard or .NET Core 3 directly. The advantages of using .NET Standard would be that you can use the library as .NET Standard without updating the rest of your app. One by one, and the .NET Standard library will continue working on the .NET Framework. And you can go layer by layer and making sure things work. So it's something you can do over time. Or cut the branch, say, look, we're going to switch it over to .NET Core 3 directly. And either way, I think you'll find that it's actually maybe easier than you expect. So one thing I can't say enough, test everything thoroughly. This is a platform change. While the API surface area may be compatible, there could be some runtime differences. And really the only way to verify that is to go through every single function that your application has and do it. Did it work as you expect? I know that most folks probably don't have full 100% UX full test coverage because it's hard and brittle. This is the kind of thing that after making this change, I would do a full 100% regression test with whatever teams or people you might have for that to catch that. I mean, it might be small things, but I would definitely count on doing that. The other bit is that .NET Framework is a machine-wide system. That means that when your application is out there, Microsoft is responsible for any security updates. Windows updates through your organization or your customer's organization will get security patches deployed machine-wide. .NET Core has two main options of providing the framework. You can use the shared framework, which is installed machine-wide, although side by side, or you can be self-contained, which is basically Xcopy deploy. Take everything on a thumb drive, or it can be bundled into that single X we talked about. The downside there is that you, the developer, are responsible for security updates. because you're carrying the full copy of the .NET Core framework in your code. So machine-wide stuff is not going to affect it. So that's the double-edged sword, the good news and the bad news. So if you are going to do a self-contained deployment, just beware of the responsibility you all need to do and have that update mechanism so that you can ship a new version of your app that has an updated core framework in it should the need arise. And we'll talk about how to do that here in a moment. One thing, and I realize this is what's a jumble here, but this is the workaround for some of the designer issues at the moment, where you can create an empty project and link in all of the existing files, and then you can use the designer from the .NET project system and have all the files be compiled for .NET Core. And we'll show you that in Visual Studio here as well. But this is a point-in-time issue. It's probably more relevant for Windows Forms, where it's hard to really do anything without the designer. Many times, XAML can be done with or without the designer. I find it, it's just easier to do it that way, so you may not need to do this if you're just doing XAML. So next up, we're going to take a look at the performance benefits as well as show some of these workarounds. And I'm going to switch over to the demo machine to do that here. So some of this you may have seen over the time, but it's going to call out a couple of key differences. This is a pie chart application that's written for .NET 4 and is also compiled for the .NET Core framework. If I just show here the files that are loaded, you can see that it's loading files up here from the global assembly cache. This is a regular .NET Framework application that you all know and love. And what I can do here is browse for a folder, come over, and I'm going to pick my dev folder, C dev. And it's going to go run through and tell me how much stuff is in it. And the point here is really to show some of the performance benefits that we're going to see in .NET Core. If we observe, it takes about 4.2 seconds to run this. Directory enumeration APIs, just no big deal here. It also happens to be using a Telerik chart for .NET 4, WPF, that's fine. Now, if I stop this and I open this up, Visual Studio will show me these linked files. And I know it's a bit small to see on this screen. There's a little blue overlay, and it has. That's what you'll see by using those compile, include, **, the wildcard expression there. You do not have to specify every single file one by one in the .NET Core projects anymore. If I run it, let me go start at the startup project. I'm also referencing, by the way, the same .NET 4 version of the Telerik control. .NET Core 3 will run most .NET 4 libraries unchanged. You do need to test it if you're using some Edge API, but there's a pretty good chance it will run. Now, if we browse for the folder, the first thing we'll notice is that the folder dialog browser looks a little bit different. No code changes, same code, but this is one of the pull requests that came in from the community and was merged in over at the Connect announcement. Yeah. Hanselman merged this. Shameless plug, I actually did this PR because the folder dialog was bugging me, and I was like, how is it 2018 and we don't have a modern folder dialog? Let's fix this. Point is that if there's some part of Windows Forms or something else which has been bothering you for a while and it's never been at the top of anybody else's list, now's the time. Or now, going forward, you can fix this. So we're going to come back, choose the dev folder, run this now, and it's going to run in under a second, fourfold faster. Same code, different platform. And that's because of some of the underlying performance benefits in the .NET Core framework. And that's the key point here, is that even if your app is running just fine, just by moving platforms, you can get instant performance wins. And on certain systems which are either resource constrained or you need that high performance, or maybe you need to get every last bit of juice because the trader has 6 screens and 18 versions of your app running, this counts. So definitely something to think about here. Now, the .NET framework, so Visual Studio today does not have file new projects for WPF or Windows Forms. Again, point-in-time thing. I'm absolutely sure it will be in a later preview. For now, the way to get started is with a command line, and that's just to say .NET new WPF. And that will create the project that you need, and then you can open that just fine in Visual Studio. So if I come up here, Explorer, and just drag this one over, open to the file menu. Sure, open, project, dev, NDC London. It will open up just fine, and it will save the solution. Save. Yes, fine, whatever. Why is it bugging me? Good. And if we run it, yay, hello world will pop up. Hello.NET Core. It's really exciting, but it gives you everything you need. And if we were to open the project file, which you can do now just simply by double-clicking the project itself, you can see this is all that's in it. So if you've ever looked at a project file for WPF or Windows Forms, your eyes are probably bleeding from fear. If you've ever had a merge conflict because 2 of you have added files or changed it from different branches, yeah, that's all gone now. So like .NET Core and .NET Standard projects, almost everything is implicit, defaulted, or otherwise. Now, you can always override all of that, but you don't need to for the vast majority of cases, so you can take advantage of all those things. Now, I'm going to shift gears here and switch over to another instance. And we're going to port an application right here as well. Quick show of hands, how many folks have used or are aware of a tool called the MS Build Log Viewer? OK, Microsoft people, you don't count. OK. Have any of you had a failing build and said, hey, what happened? Or maybe you're trying to get that diagnostic output and trying to read that 20 megabyte build log file? Anyone? Yeah? So this is a tool you want to know about, because you add /BL, build log, to the build parameter, and it gives you a bin log file, which has all the details. It's basically everything that the log does in a compressed binary form that a tool like this Microsoft MS Build Structured Log Viewer can read. And it shows you everything in a nice tree, and you can search for errors and double-click things and see the targets, right? You can also then evaluate all of the items and properties. And while this isn't strictly a talk on this tool, I will point out that this is probably the thing that can help people understand the voodoo of MS Build. So if you're really trying to say, look, why did my build go crazy? This tool will help you understand it, absolutely. I couldn't have done what I do without this. This is a lifesaver. What I do want to do, though, is make this run on .NET Core 3. This is right now, it's WPF. It's using a tree view. It's using the Avalon edit controls right here. It's a stock component. And I'm going to say, look, that's nice, but I want to take advantage of some newer functionality. And what I'm going to start with is I'm going to unload it. And that's some other project. And I'm going to edit it. And this is the project file that we all know and hate. It's here. Let's just make it go away. Now, just so you don't have to see me typing, I do have it in a snippet. But the key here is that this is almost the same as the file new project template, at least the command line project template. But I've added in here a project reference to a .NET Standard class library. I already did that, as we talked about. And adds a couple of NuGet references. This NuGet reference here is the same Avalon edit, same version. It's not a .NET Core 3 project. This is .NET 4 on WPF. No problem. Now I'm going to reload it. Yes. Sure. Save it. Let's do a rebuild. And boom. It says it's going to fail. That's OK. Because what it has in here are 3 extra properties that you can choose to either keep and turn off the generation of, or just delete. MS Build in the new project system will generate many or most of the assembly level attributes for you. So there's almost no code changes. But for those ones, I'm going to delete them. And if you want to add them back, we can come in to the project properties, add them under the build settings, and it will go ahead and add them for you. So you don't have to wait. This thing is getting confused, isn't it? Get it? It looks like it didn't. Oh, yeah. Keep it. Oh, that's Avalonia, yeah. I opened that one. It opens the other one, didn't it? Edit. OK, yeah, that's right. I don't know why I was saying .NET 4.6. Maybe Visual Studio is getting confused. That wouldn't surprise me. I did say it was preview, right? OK, package. That looks better. Here we go. So this will give you all the properties that we can add here, whether it's assembly versions, the descriptions, the package IDs, and all of this. So you don't have to do this within your code, and you can configure this dynamically as part of a build. It's much easier that way. So let me just rebuild it now. We do have a member of the project system in here, and I hope he's paying attention. OK. OK, so it says it should have finished. Go. There we go. Rebuild, and it should succeed. And it's giving me a couple of warnings in here. And the warnings here are really just telling me that, hey, this succeeded, but it was restored, or this package was used, the .NET Framework version. There be dragons. Be careful. It should work. But it's just letting you know that. And you can suppress that warning if you're saying, yep, got it, understand, it's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yep, let's go launch it. And hopefully, to no one's surprise, it works. Now, and it looks the same because it is the same. But it is running on .NET Core 3. And I can come over here. I open the file. It's going to run. I can come in here. I can see the XML with all the syntax highlighting, and it's running the Avalon edit WPF controls on .NET Core 3. And I say, this is pretty awesome. I'm going to go check out and give the author some feedback. And bam. I did say that there were performance or behavioral differences, didn't I? So it's code compatible. But there are a few things, and this is one of them, where there are minor changes you may need to make in the code. So this is why it's critical to test it. And I'm pushing them, Microsoft, to create a top issues document that would at least include something like this. The issue in this case is that we've used process.start to launch the URL in the user's default browser. Well, that works great on the .NET Framework, where everyone assumed it was just running on Windows. The behavior in .NET Core is a little different, and we need to explicitly tell it to use shell execute equals true, which is the equivalent of what you would do in the Windows Explorer or the run dialog in Windows Explorer. It is an easy change, so let's just come over here and go, var psi equals new process start. And then file path, or file name, here we go. Put that here. Oh. PSI. And if we run it again, we'll see that it, oh, wait. Where's the stop button? Stop. All we did is change the process start info. We didn't actually set the right parameter. Use shell execute crew. That's the magic there. Now it should work as we expect. And if it starts up here, here we go. And it help launch the URL, and off we go. Yes, I do use Edge as my default browser. I do like it, and you can fight me. And that there is just, again, an example. There may be others, but it can be this easy. As an anecdote, how many folks here are using or have used NuGet Package Explorer? Anyone heard of it? OK, thank you for using it. For the rest of you, it is a tool that can help view NuGet packages. If you're saying, I need to either find one or I want to see what's in it, or maybe check that it might be signed correctly or otherwise, it's out there, and you can search either in the Microsoft Store or on GitHub or Chocolatey. It's out there a number of different ways. It was a .NET 4.5 application. I moved it over to use .NET Core 3 early before the Preview 1 bits hit, and it required almost no code changes. Again, so many of these things here can be moved over very easily. I mean, you might have something to do like a process.start, like I showed you here. So let's come back over to the deck for a moment. And move on to everyone's favorite topic, distribution. So you could have a modern application. You've modernized it. You're running on .NET Core 3, and it's self-contained. But you still have to get it to your users. Now, how many folks here have an internal IT department that likes to muck up all their binaries and repackage things? Someone's not raising their hand. Guilty. Yeah. This is not an uncommon thing. Many organizations will take installers, send them off to their IT group who knows better than everyone else, and repackage it for internal distribution. That can muck things up. How many folks here are using Click Once today? Anyone? MSI, just plain building an installer file? OK. How about Squirrel? Any Squirrel users? OK. Something else? Any I miss something? OK. Exes with NuGet packages. I like it. So all of these things here have a number of different challenges that you might face. One of them is the repackaging. And repackaging apps takes time, as well as can very often break things. Often, clean uninstallation of apps is not possible, because application bits go on the machine, and they'll write things to the registry, write things to the local settings, and this and that. And how many of you have ever tried to uninstall iTunes? Yeah, you laugh because it's true. I will say that iTunes has been repackaged as a Windows Store, or as a desktop bridge application, and it is actually safe to use again. Auto-updating can be a challenge because every different mechanism needs a way of getting it there. If you're packaging just with an MSI, well, you're probably relying on the IT department System Center or worse mechanism of getting it to your users. If you're using Click Once, well, you know, God bless you. It's hopefully still working for you, but can be very limited in what it can do. Squirrel has other ways, and again, that's where it was designed to help solve the auto-updating while it's still used problem. In fact, the MS Build Log viewer uses that today. But there's a number of different options, and all of them can leave your machine in a state of who knows by the time it goes away. So all of these have been consolidated into a single packaging format going forward for Microsoft, and that's called MSIX. Anyone here heard of this? Anyone using this yet today? OK, good. Because using MSIX is actually pretty straightforward and is perfect for .NET Framework or .NET Core 3 applications. Because what it is, it's an application bundle that you can give to your users and will put bits on their machine that can be used and uninstalled in a clean and safe and controlled way. Takes all of the existing techniques and moves forward. It uses less disk space because while it is installed per user, it is stored in a central machine location. So if you have a workstation or a dense environment, like a server or virtualized server environment, you don't have to worry about that 300 meg application being on the machine 20 times. OS manages the updates. It can do differential block level updates. So if you're dealing with a branch office situation, you don't have to download a gigabyte. It'll download the different 100 megabytes or whatever if something changed. And if you're using an application, particularly with maybe some ML models in it, those ML models can be big. Again, lots of different things are using a game with textures or graphics or sound. Many of those assets don't change from time to time, and this can be very efficient at getting those bits to the disk. It also has automatic update capability that's managed by the system and configurable by the developer, as well as integrity protection. So the whole package is signed up by you, and the operating system handles making sure it hasn't been mucked around with by bad things. Yes. So the question was, does that include unattended? And I'll say it is unattended for updates. There are ways you can script the installation as well with PowerShell so that you can do that part as part of a user login. But it does need to be done in a user login session because of the context. For distribution options, the thing I want to drive home is that this has nothing to do with the Windows Store. Windows Store is there. It's great if you want to use it. And there is a store for business. But most places and most organizations are saying, well, why do I want to use that? I have my own internal mechanism, and I don't want to wait 1 to 3 days for Microsoft to maybe approve my package and get it out to my users. So these techniques with the MSIX and the app installer configuration file can be sitting anywhere on an internal file share, on an internal or external web server. It's really up to you. So that's really the important bit, is that this is the replacement for click once. It's the better click once. So anywhere you're using and distributing files or applications, I would strongly suggest moving over and looking at App Installer. It is included in Visual Studio 2017 as part of the UWP package. It is based on similar technologies, but it is not a UWP app. It is exactly what you have today. And you can use it for WPF, WinForms, MFC, whatever. And we'll take a look here at packaging up an existing project and then look at a technique that and how to light up for Windows 10. So that might be a scenario where we have an app. We still have to support Windows 7. But you know what? If you're running on Windows 10, maybe we can use some of the Windows 10 APIs in a cleaner way here. Let's switch back over to the MS Build Log viewer. And so we've just created the MS Build Log viewer. And what we want to do here now is add a packaging project. So come back and hit Add New Project. And if I search, and this is the new project dialog for 2019, I'm still getting used to it. But I can search for package. Package. There we go. Next. And I will give it a name like the project name.package just for convenience, so I remember what it is. Log viewer. Although you can call it, of course, whatever you want. And it will ask me what are the versions of Windows that I want to target. In this case, it's a bit less relevant because this isn't really UWP app, but if you are calling Windows 10 APIs, then it could be relevant. It's just there. So it creates the packaging project. All I do at this point is add the reference to the main executable. MS build structured as the library. Sorry. And if I build this up now, it will create a package, and that's it. This will create a store package that can be handed over to either uploaded to the Microsoft Store or something you can use in a file share. And as soon as it builds here, we'll take a look at how to create that final package. Again, I hate the fact that it says store, but it is creating any packages, create app packages. And the key here is this bit that says side loading. That means from your file share, from your web server. It means everything other than the Windows Store. It means give it on a thumb drive to your tester or to your user. Or if your company already has an internal distribution mechanism, you can copy it there. That's what sideloading means. Okay. And there's also that option for automatic updates. So we select that. We'll select that it needs to be an x86 app because we are saying that it has to have a version of the runtime. We want to do this as self-contained. Next, how many days do we want to have updates? Is there every day or every time it launches? And there's other ways to control this programmatically from within your app. Give it some UNC share, whatever.
Can you just turn it off and have it update when the file changes? Does it have to check?
You'd have to do that probably custom with a file watcher. The question is, can you do it automatically when the file changes? I think you'd have to check that with a file change, or just do it like every minute. You could control the frequency with more granularity with the manifest XML that's underneath all of this. And what it's going to do here is it's going to build it. It's going to do it in a self-contained way. And in a minute or less, we'll have here the packages. Here we go. And it's going to show us the folder. And it gives us this app installer file. That is the moral equivalent of the click once file. That's the kind of the unversioned file. You can put this with the link to somewhere. This file name will never change. And then it has a versioned subdirectory with the file underneath it. And it's about 40 megabytes, because if we open it up and look at it, it's really just a zip file. And we can see inside that it has a full copy of the .NET Core framework in here. So that's why it's self-contained. You could give this to somebody which doesn't have .NET installed, or .NET Core installed, and it will just run. Even better, because I hate writing web pages. I mean, I am a desktop developer after all. It even gives me the web page template to stick somewhere if I want to give people, hey, click here. And what this will do is it uses a protocol handler to launch the bootstrapping app. And you only have to do this once. This is the app that just registers that app installer package with the system. And it's failing here because I've told it whack whack foo bar, and it says, hey, there is no such place. But you would show here the package information and one final click to install. It can also be scripted with PowerShell for an IT department to say on user login, install this package once, and then from there on in, the app installer file controls the frequency of updates and such. So that's a one-time thing. And if you've used NuGet Package Explorer, there is a CI feed option. And in fact, I do this as part of my CI build. You can click within the GitHub site. It will open the app installer file. And from there on in, whenever I publish it nightly or daily or actually every single build, it could potentially just silently update in the background for you. So there's that.
Is it copying it locally somewhere on like this?
So the question is it copying locally to the disk? And the answer is yes. So the app installer file and the appx file or MSIX file lives on the network share or the file web server or wherever. It takes the file, puts it to a shared location on Windows, and then registers it within the user. So if you have multiple users on the system that are all using the same version, it's still only in one place, and it ref counts it. So if there's only one user and you get the next version, it doesn't keep 100 versions behind. So coming up to the final demo here, the natural question is, OK, Windows 10. We want to use some of these new APIs, but how do we potentially build an app that lights up and is available for Windows 10, but also supports running on Windows 7? And that's where we can come in and use some runtime detection. And I'm going to come in here and say, if Windows version helper, and this is a custom library. It's on NuGet called OS version helper. This will save lots of nasty pinvoke code. But there's a helper method called has package identity. What that does is say, hey, am I running on Windows 10, and can I use the new APIs? That means that it's in a desktop bridge package and registered with the system correctly. Otherwise, you were on Windows 7 or somewhere where it might be on Windows 10, but just running outside of the package. And you cannot use those new APIs. So all that, one little call. And what I'm going to do here is, so you don't have to watch me type, I'm going to drag this method in here, which says show toast notification using Windows runtime. Else, we're somewhere else. We need to show toast a different way. So let's come back in here and show toasts down level. So we're going to put that in here. And the key bit here isn't that it's using the Windows 10 APIs, but that if you're going to do a runtime feature detection, particularly for Windows 10, you do want to ensure that you use the method impl options. This is one that you've probably never seen. It's buried in system, .compiler services somewhere. What it does, though, is that it tells the JIT, don't try and squash this method body into the thing that's calling it. And that's super important, because if you're on Windows 7, the types that are in here, like Toast Notification Manager, aren't there. They're defined as part of Windows. So you need to make sure that you use the no inlining to prevent that from happening. But if we run this now, what I'm going to do is let's publish it, actually. Publish. Excuse me. So a folder, create profile. Publish, OK, perfect. Release, not core app, configuration. They just changed this dialog on me. Framework dependent, I want to say self-contained. Keep everything together, and it's going to be for Windows x86. There we go. Hit save, and I hit publish. And that's going to give me everything that I need in the output folder. At the same time, let me come in, the application, rebuild this. If we run, excuse me. I'm so sorry. We run it from the package, hit click. Oh, here we go. We get a toast notification that's nicely respecting the notifications that Windows 10 has. And if I can turn this off, click it again, it pops up using the Windows 10 API. Now, if we take this same thing, let's go to the output directory that we published. x86 and a Core i3, WinX86. Here's all our files. What I'm going to do here is take this folder, copy it, paste it here onto my Windows 7 VM, just to prove here a point that this will work as is on a Windows 7 machine. This machine does not have .NET Core 3 installed anywhere on it. And in a few seconds, you can just hit here, run it. Let's go find the exe, and this was just WPF app. So let's go find it, run it, click, and we have a different toast style because this machine does not have the new API. Same app, same binary, works everywhere, and that's that. Switching back. With that, I just want to leave you with a couple of takeaways. One is that now is the time that Microsoft is officially recommending that all new apps be starting and written on .NET Core 3. That is new. Up until now, it's been an it depends answer. Now they're changing their tune. And as we kind of talked about before, use your judgment. I wouldn't touch that app that gets an update once every 18 months. It's not worth it. And finally, some resources and some links to help get started with .NET Core 3. My blog has a bunch of resources from time to time. They are pretty technical and in-depth, but I try to explain it. And of course, if you have any questions or need help on your migration project, please tweet at me, and I will try to do my best to help you. And with that, thank you very much. Certainly happy to take questions if, we're just about at time, but, I'll stick around for a few minutes. So.